Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me today in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher. I met my next guest back in the 1990s when he was doing his internship working with me at the Walt Disney Studios. Today, Adam Glass is a successful writer and executive producer of such primetime television shows as Supernatural, Cold Case, Criminal Minds Beyond Borders, The Chi, and the upcoming Barkskins on National Geographic. When he is not writing for TV and films, he is a New York Times bestselling graphic novelist for DC and Marvel Comics. I'm so excited that he's agreed to speak with me today and share his road to success in Hollywood. Please welcome to the locker room, Adam Glass. Hello, my friend.
How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. It's been a long time.
It has been. And I was just thinking to myself, how do you just keep looking younger and younger? What's your secret?
Oh, I don't know. my parents, my genes.
Good genes, those do help. I've learned with
Good genes. Good genes.
I'm so dressed, by the way. So I read somewhere once that you dress the place in your life that you found yourself like most comfortable, where you really found yourself. So apparently for me, that was 14 years old because I still, my wife's like 50 years old, grow up.
That is so funny. How old are your kids? Do you have a 14-year-old?
My daughter is 20 and my son is 16.
16. Wow, that's crazy. So let's go back. Oh, look at the hair. Look at the hair. It's very funny. I knew I had a picture of you, and I thought it was you and I, but it was you and Michael Giacchino and Kevin McGinnis. I knew I had one, but I thought it was of us. And you had hair down to like here.
Do you show that picture today? Are we going to see that?
No, I didn't. I should have. I was going to use it if it was of us.
Send it to me? I'd like to see it.
Oh yeah, I definitely will. Take us back to that internship. You were at Brooklyn College.
Yes, sir.
And you did you do my college marketing program?
Yes, I think I was your first hire.
That's what I thought, with Katie Chin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we turned around and I was going to Brooklyn College for film, but I had quite a road to get to Brooklyn College. I had already gone to SUNY Albany for 2 years. I lived in LA and done stand-up for a year. And I decided to come back and get my college degree because no one in my family ever graduated college. So I wanted to be the first to graduate college. So I was going to Brooklyn College. I was bartending in New York City. And one day, Dan, oh my God, I can't remember Dan's last name, he was the head of our department, had put up that Disney, you saw the mouse and you knew it was Disney for internships in marketing. And I grew up always loving Hollywood, loving old movies, I just had such a love for Hollywood. So I knew I always wanted to be in show business. I think I was just trying to figure out how to get in. So for me, it was like, it's Disney, it's marketing. I don't care. I'll apply for it. So I applied for it. And I'm pretty sure we had to like send a little something, like write up something, why we should be the person. And then I think from the, I don't know, 20 people or 30 people that applied, you then knocked it down to like 4 or 5 interviews, and you came down to Brooklyn College to our department. And I remember we all had to meet with you in a room. And I remember I had to get to work because I was like, I really wasn't a student. I was a student, but I was like full-time, also job. And I had to get to the city and get to work. And I remember I met with you. And I thought, we hit it off. I thought you and I sort of had a connection and we hit it off. And I remember I went out and I was sort of running down the hallway to get out of there. And Dan started to call me, like basically yell for me. And he said, Alan just wanted to say goodbye. And when you said goodbye to me, you were like, you're my pick.
That's awesome.
Yeah, you can't remember.
I can't remember.
It meant more to me than you, Alan.
Well, it's so funny. I mean, there's
my life, Alan, and you're like, yeah, 1 of a million, 1 of a million.
No, but it for people who don't know, I mean, I worked at the Walt Disney Company and I ran a college marketing program, and there are a number of very successful folks that I've hired, and it does make me so proud. I think that program was great for college. I mean, I would have loved it.
Yeah, it was really interesting because I think you're like a scout. You had a really good eye. You definitely, I mean, you picked me, you picked, Michael, obviously, who's done great things too. By the way, I've run into a million times out here, which is so funny.
That's awesome.
Actually, I'll tell you a quick side Michael story. I hadn't seen Michael for years.
Well, let's tell everybody. Michael Giacchino is the Academy Award-winning composer who worked in the marketing department for Michael Scrimenti at Disney, and has gone on to a little bit of success.
Done well. So I had not seen him in years, and this is just the strange thing about life. And my son became friends with this boy, and one day I went to pick him up at this boy's house, Griffey, and I look on the wall, and there's Michael, and I'm like, whoa, Griffey, your dad is Michael? And he's like, yeah, and he's like, I said, your dad here? He said, yeah, he's in the back. I said, tell him Adam Glass is here. So through our kids, we reconnected.
Oh my God, that's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
So I read that about you, by the way, about going to Hollywood first. I didn't realize you went before the college program.
I did for 1 year, and I did stand-up comedy, and I produced my first comedy special, which is so funny. I'm not even in comedy anymore, but it was like, it was really where I got my sea legs. The belief that I can do this. I mean, you know where we grow up. It's hard. I grew up in Co-op City in the Bronx, and then moved to upstate New York. And, it's limited what you can do. Show business is a million miles away. Like, I remember my family were like, you're going to become an electrician just like your uncles and everything like that. And I was like, I'm not becoming an electrician. I was like, that's not happening. I'm not good with my hands. I don't like the cold. I was like, I'm more of an artsy type. So I was going to
But that's funny though, because I went for accounting. And I bumped into someone I was working at a health club. I was managing a health club. And the woman overheard me say I would love to get into entertainment. And she got me my job as a page at ABC Television, which opened every door for me.
Yeah, and listen, right, it's to a point that you're making, which is like, I never wanted to be in marketing. I just wanted to be around the business and learn things. And it was really the first corporation I worked for that in entertainment. So to be part of that company and see it. And I remember, again, like, when you're young, you're so excited to get mail. I would get boxes of posters and like buttons. And let's take a step back. So, because I think it'll help your audience understand what we did. So the idea, back when there was movies and movie theaters, we basically
that little thing
would market movies out. And I think for you, and I can't speak 100%, but obviously you could fill in the blanks. You saw that there was a marketplace within the collegiate sort of, thing to get younger people and draw on. By the way, first thing I walk in and literally, I think you guys are like a month away from doing Beauty and the Beast, like launching it. Wow. So all of a sudden I'm thrown into screenings. I'm thrown into getting articles put into local college newspapers. I'm, getting radio interviews. Like, I'm thrown into right into the deep end, and I loved it. It was awesome. I felt like I was part of something much bigger than myself. Right. And we grew up on Disney and all that stuff. So I still have actually people who remember me getting them tickets. I always tell this story. I was a terrible student, shockingly. And especially if it came to math or English. So finally, the one thing I needed to do to graduate from college, I shouldn't even admit this because they'll take my degree away, my CUNY, was I needed to turn around and basically pass Spanish. So like most young men, I took it half serious, and I literally walked into my final, which is it. I graduate college if I pass this final. I walk in and they put it in front of me and I don't know a single answer. And I literally sit there for like 30 minutes going, oh my God. I'm like, I'm not going to graduate. All my plans to move to California. Like, I blew it. All of a sudden, this young woman walks by me and just drops all the answers on my table, on my desk. I end up getting a B because, obviously I'm smart enough not to get all the answers right. The teacher would never believe it. So
exactly.
I'm admitting that I cheated. And then I go outside and she's standing outside. And I said to her, she was Dominican. And I remember saying to her, why'd you do that? And she goes, you got me and my daughter tickets to see Beauty and the Beast. So I passed college because I got her into a screening of Beauty and the Beast.
It is funny. With movies, there are so many lives you did touch. Like inviting somebody to a screening and seeing a movie for the first time. And you were responsible for Brooklyn College and like 3 to 4 other schools in the area. I don't remember what those were.
All the CUNYs. Yeah. So we were covering all the CUNYs. So yeah, it was great to network and to meet people. And I really had, because I don't know if you remember this, I would throw parties, club parties and stuff like that. So it really helped that business, because I was meeting all these people along the way. And then I would, like, on top of that, be able to take that and then sort of like, oh, here, do this. And by the way, come check out this party. And, so I was able to, I think, cross all those sort of worlds and everything like that. And it was really helpful. And listen, it didn't lead to anything like directly in my career, but what it did do is, I think, give me the confidence that I needed to know I could do it and play at that level.
Well, yeah, I mean, we trusted, the students to really, I mean, like you said, you received boxes of, things that didn't cost cheap, like posters and press kits and all that stuff to help market those movies. And at that time too, Disney was doing a ridiculous amount of movies.
Pretty
Disney
Tracy. Like I feel like I was at the golden age of, like,
Yeah. Oh yeah, me too.
And then also marketing, right? Especially in this day and age, like marketing, all we're doing is marketing ourselves. We are our brands, right? So, like, you learn so much through you and Scrimenti. And I apologize, I shouldn't probably ask this. Is Michael still with us?
He is. He might be watching. If he couldn't figure out how to, if he figured out how to push the link, I will check in with him after this. But
what a well-dressed devil he was. I always used to.
Oh yeah. He left me a message last night, and it was typical Michael. So definitely. So what were you like as a child? I mean, you said you watched movies. I mean, comic books, was that something from an early age for you?
Yeah. So, listen, and I say this with complete humility, but also, like, I always talk about this, like, I'm fine. When you're a child, I don't think you realize, where I grew up, everybody was the same. So, like, like, I look back now and I'm like, oh, we were poor. We were on welfare. I didn't have a dad. I was raised by my bubby and my mom, and, my bubby kept kosher, but I grew up in a neighborhood that, the Jews had left a long time ago and my grandmother forgot to leave, right? She used to say to me, what's with all the hip hop music? I'd be like, look out the window. Like, I'm the cracker in the box, like, and I loved growing up like that. I joke that it took me to college to realize that, I was a white Jewish kid, because, like, I got to college and I was like, oh, okay. And also realizing the difference of sort of money and wealth and all that stuff. So in some ways, my childhood was, for all those things, pretty good, because you ran around the streets, you had your friends. It sounds like, I feel like I'm telling you like an old Woody Allen story. I remember back playing stickball, and, it's like, but I did. It was the 70s in New York and the early 80s. It was just an awesome time. And I loved comic books. I loved anything creative to get my mind. I loved movies. My grandma, my bubby loved movies. So we'd watch movies. She'd always watch the black and white movies. I remember my favorite thing was on Sunday mornings, Abbott and Costello would be on WPIX at 11:30, and I'd watch all the Abbott and Costellos. So I just always had a love for it, right? School plays. I was that interesting hybrid. I was a jock, but I was also a theater, person. So, I could do both. I was good enough in sports to play, but I could also go do the school play, and I always sort of walked those two lines. But to your point, everything I learned early on about story and structure and all that stuff was through comic books. My son's really dyslexic.
Who introduced you? Did somebody hand you your first comic?
Yeah, I always talk about this, and it's interesting because I don't know whatever happened to him, but Eddie Pagan, wherever you are, you in this road. So Eddie was a kid who lived upstairs from my apartment building. And like most little kids, I looked up to him. I think I was 4 or 5 and he was 8 or 9, and I probably annoyed him and followed him everywhere. But like, I just so was, attracted to an older boy, and like, let's, I want to be like an older boy and do older boy things. And he gave me a bunch of comic books and a bunch of Spider-Mans and Batmans and stuff like that. And that really started my comic book thing. And then I think that like, now I really aged myself. I remember when comic books were a quarter. So I always joke, like I don't know how it was for you, but like we would go to school. I went to PS 105 in Pelham Parkway, and in the afternoon at our lunch break, we could walk a block away, 2 blocks away, to what was called the Avenue, where all the stores and the restaurants were and everything like that. I mean, I'm in first grade, second grade, and you could leave your school by yourself, no cell phone, and walk the Avenue. You usually went with a friend, right? And have lunch, and you knew to be back. And you'd watch the clock. And, for $1, I'd get a slice of pizza for 50 cents, then a quarter for a soda, and then have a quarter left over to either play pinball or get a comic book. And I always went and got comic books. And they were at the time sold on the racks, in the candy store. They were no comic book stores. So, very early on. But I was going to say something later. My son is very dyslexic, and I don't think I was ever diagnosed, because back then they just didn't know. And I think if I look back now, probably the draw to comic books was also the pictures and the reading, because most people, their reading all comes from fine literature. Later in college, I got into reading fine literature, but most of my high school experience was reading comic books.
And when did you start? But you talk about that you started writing early, or your imagination started really early. From that?
Mike Houdini Cup, by the way, another one of my favorite people in the world that I love.
Who is that?
Houdini.
Oh yeah, I know, because the Rough Riders is based or right.
I'm big.
I'm not a comic book, so I'm fascinated at your. I'm a superhero person, but I was never. I very rarely did I read comics, but I definitely I loved all all the superhero stuff.
So back to your creativity. Look. I think it's one of those things, again, where you don't know as you're going through it, but you later realize, oh yeah, I was in some weird way preparing for this my whole life. Always writing, always drawing. I probably had ADHD too and all that stuff too. And again, I just didn't know because I couldn't focus in class. I just was bored out of my mind. And I always remember the counselors telling my mom the same thing, which is like, he's so bright, but he doesn't apply himself, and it was like, and in fact, I remember getting into SUNY Albany, which, is a good school, and my guidance counselor almost fell over. Little did she know, which would be the theme of my life, I found the loophole to get in through, which was a program called EOP, which was Equal Opportunity Programs for poor kids. So it didn't matter what your grades were, but I didn't tell her that I had applied through EOP. And it's basically, if your parents made that less than $20,000 a year, you could apply. My mom, I think I got her tax return made like $12,000 that year. She was a hostess at Howard Johnson's. So like when I say we were poor, we were pretty poor. And I got in, and I remember she couldn't believe I got in. Like she just was like, I think out of 125 kids in my graduating class, I was 91, of my graduating class. So, it's also that thing about like, right, book smarts versus life smarts, versus, it's all so different, But yes, creatively writing most of my life. I was writing ideas and short stories, and my family tells me when I was little I would put on these plays for them. I don't remember, but I would always act out every part and tell a story, and always loved stories and always loved story time, and always loved being in the campfire and hearing stories. So stories are what make us who we are. And especially being Jews, I think so many stories. We're storytellers, right? It's like it's something culturally that gets passed down to us too. My grandfather. My grandfather was a great storyteller, and I remember listening to his stories, and so I think that's also part of it.
There's a lot of history.
Yeah, a lot of history.
And then, so the second time to Hollywood, how did you?
Well, the first time to Hollywood was really interesting because, again, I was a young man. I had been at SUNY Albany, and I was a theater major, and I sort of realized, like, and I have a lot of friends who are actors, so I hate to say this, but like, I just wasn't into myself that much. Like I had to, like, I wanted to get out of my head. I didn't want to get deeper into my head. Like I just wasn't, and the program for me wasn't working great. And I just dreamt of California my whole life. Like I just wanted to go. Had never been, right? I just wanted to go to California. And I had my friend at the time, who was my high school best friend, who I went to college with. He's like, I'll go with you. I'm not feeling Albany either. And so we went out, and I got to LA, and really with no plan other than just let's go. What was really funny is I think I came out with like $800, which again was like nothing, right? It's like we're kids. We're not thinking about like, oh, we need to get an apartment, we have to put a down payment and all that stuff. So again, in sort of the world of hustle, I had pledged Teak fraternity, which I had little to do with after I pledged them a stupidly young man for a best friend of mine because he was in it. And I was like, oh, I want to be with my best friend. And then I got in and I was like, I'm not really a frat guy. But when I got to UCLA, oh boy, I went right to the Teak house.
And you're like, I need a place.
I need a place. I knew the handshake. I knew everything. And I basically, the first like couple of months they put us up. And even though I didn't go to UCLA, I didn't, I just went where the kids were. So I moved to Westwood. I was like, where are all the kids? I'm a college kid. I want to be where the college kids are. So I got an apartment. At first lived at the Teak House, then got an apartment there. Started doing stand-up. Just everyone was like, oh, you're funny, and I think so. I did that for a while, tried that. But most importantly, I produced my first live show. And I did almost like a Saturday Night Live show and put it on. And it was the first time I was like, oh, I can do this, right? Like I have the chutzpah and I have the organizational skills and I could do it. But was really hanging over my head was I wanted to finish college really badly. And I had a buddy, Neil Freiberg, whose mom, worked at Brooklyn College. And she had told me once, if you ever want help, let me know. And I sort of called her and said, I feel like I need to finish this before I'm here. I feel like I left something behind me. And in all honesty, I was partying way too much. It was a lot of things. Like I saw a road and I was like, is this the road I want to travel right now? Am I ready for this? Like I had all those things. So I came back to New York and at first it was really hard. It was hard. All my friends had moved on, or either in college or, living different lives. I was living in a base apartment in Bensonhurst with a really beautiful, nice Italian family, but I had no furniture. I just had like a cot in there that I slept on. I was going to Brooklyn College. I was working in New York, but I lived in Bensonhurst, but every day I was traveling like 3 hours a day. It was really insane. And then I think as I got the job, got the internship with you guys, I think I finally moved into the city, which really helped a great deal. And so then what happened was I started to make short films, which I think you might remember. And I made one called Pawns that basically, did incredibly well. And I started to have like people from LA very interested in me and the things I was doing. And I kept saying, it was also the independent New York filmmaker time. So it was like, Nick Gomez and Spike Lee. And it was like, no, I'm going to stay in New York. I'm a New Yorker. I'm a hardcore New Yorker. I'm not going back out to LA. And again, if I'm going to be bluntly honest, I had a college sweetheart and who was really great. Her and her family were just amazing to me. They were good people. But her father took me out for a drink and literally was like, you've been together 5 years. Mind you, I'm 22, 23 years old. And he said, why don't you and her get married and we'll put a down payment on a house down the street from you. And, and I saw my whole life just flash across from me. And I went home to my roommates and said, I'm moving to California. So I realized that moment if I didn't do it.
Scared you out west.
Well, I realized if I didn't do it, I'd never live. And I said to him, I remember, and he was a really good man, so I don't want to in any way discourage. But I remember I said, I have all these dreams. And he said, and then you grow up. And I was like, yeah. I was like, not for me.
When you're young is when you're supposed to do that.
Yep. So that was for me the big thing. I wanted to turn around and I had to give it a swing. I had to give it a real shot. Mind you, I got to LA and I struggled hard for like 3-4 years. I lived hand to mouth. I was homeless for a while. I lived in a car. I really struggled. Like there were moments where I was like, did I make the right decision? But I found a group of guys that I really who are still friends to this day. And actually some of my friends, even from New York, moved out and joined me out there. And like one of them just got married the other day and we were all together. We've been friends for over 30 years.
So I think you posted a picture.
Yeah, we're friends for over 30 years. So it's like, it's really, beautiful and good. And, you find your tribe, you find your people, and that's what ended up happening. But it was a real, it took me, I'm just trying to think. I think it is 3.5-4 years before I made $1, and I refused to work, which was the other thing, because I was like, if I'm going to make it, I have to give this my all. I'm not going to bartend and wait tables anymore. Just got to give this everything I got, And I had my college degree, which obviously didn't help me at all, but I wanted it, which was more moral.
But that was a family thing,
yep.
And to prove a point, which is really, I'm glad you stuck with that because it is important. It just sort of breaks that cycle and helps. Just to even say that out loud, other
yep.
people hear it. The people
yep.
watching this,
yep.
it is important to have that degree. Do you remember what was the first thing that you sort of did, in Hollywood that you felt I might be able to make this work?
Well, so funny. So I had written, you'd get these little like B movie things here and there, you know, $2,500, $5,000, but that's all I'd make all year. So it's like, it sounds good, but it was like,
Right.
it was like, yeah, that's it. Like I have to live off $5,000 for the whole year, right? And
actually, to write the whole movie, or to be a writer?
Well, you'd write the, you know, the first couple of drafts, you know, and then someone else would usually come in and rewrite you. But two things happened, you know. By the way, I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with 5 guys, you know, like, yeah, but it was like, because I think rent was like $95, you know, so like that was the reason we did it. And then I couldn't even make the rent sometimes for $95. It was insane. But so what ended up happening was I had a writing partner that I teamed up with. I don't know if you remember Kenny Gamble, and we were Gamble and Glass, and Kenny and I wrote a couple of things together, and then finally we wrote a movie. And then it was the strangest thing. We wrote this movie, we gave it to a bunch of our friends, and then we got a call from a friend in San Francisco who said, "Can you paint a house?" And we're broke, so we're like, "Yeah, we can paint a house." We've never painted a house in our life. So we go up to San Francisco, which I'd never been. And then the story follows is this: like, we paint the house. He's not happy, but he pays us. I meet a girl. I end up in the hate. And then I end up at the premiere of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, literally the premiere party in San Francisco. Like, and as you can imagine, it was quite a party. And
yeah, I can imagine.
I'm gone for like a month, right? Like you know, and this is like, if there were cell phones, I probably couldn't afford one at this time, but I think it was still beepers at the time, you know. And we come back and we go to a party, and there was a guy named Laurent, who now I think is Steven Spielberg's like professional librarian. Wait. Do you know Laurent?
Laurent is a good friend of mine. Laurent Fouzereau.
Yes, Laurent. So please,
oh my God.
The way our worlds keep crossing.
That is crazy.
So yeah, so Laurent was the one who says to me, where the fuck have you been? You know, like, okay, so I'm sorry. I'm like, there's
okay.
You know, and
like, oh my God. I'm
like,
Laurent.
What are you talking about? He's like, everyone loves your script. I have managers who want to meet. So he had read the script, thought it was amazing, called Killing Time. And he had given it to a bunch of people. And all of a sudden,
I'm calling him when I get off the show with you.
Yeah. Please. And I
want to know what's really funny?
Yeah.
I met Laurent through his good friend and my good friend, Stephen Lapp, who was a designer at Disney of the movie posters. He created all the movie posters during the time that I was there. He now owns his own business out in a creative agency.
By the way, I mean, I know you're probably saving this for later, but just the degrees of separation, how you're on a helicopter in Hawaii with one of my good friends. I mean, how crazy is
on my honeymoon?
On his honeymoon too.
Yeah.
Robbie. I mean, it's just crazy. It's just
that is really crazy.
Yeah, because he starts telling me that story, and I'm like, and he's like this, and there's these two guys, and I'm like, his name Alan Locher by any chance? And he's like, yeah, how'd you know? And I'm like, I'm like, oh my God. So back to Laurent. Yeah, Laurent. So Laurent actually introduced us to a bunch of people, but the person who really helped us was a guy named Kevin Morton. Do you know Kevin? So
no, I
Kevin
don't think so.
Was a producer at New Line, and I remember we went to his house, and he's like, I love your movie, and I can get you an agent, and I can do all these things for you. He's like, what do you need? And we literally looked at him and we said, do you have anything to eat? Because we had not eaten in like a day and a half. That's how poor we were. And he made us soup. He made us like a stew, and we sat at his house and we drank and we talked. And listen, let me just cut to the chase. We owe everything to the gay mafia. They pulled us in. They pulled us in.
Amazing.
And it was nothing but love, and it was awesome. And they saw in me and Kenny. So that really started. And then, you know, there's that thing is like, you get your agent and you think, oh, all right, got my agent. Well, then became the next journey, right? Which is now we have to prove ourselves. We have to get gigs. We have to meet people. And I always say this with, you know, complete humility and transparency. I know this is going to shock you, Alan, but I was a better salesman and pitcher than I was a writer when I was younger. So I could sell things. I could sell anything to anyone, but then it was like the execution of it took time to learn my craft and to get to a place. So Kenny and I really got on this road where we started to sort of hit, and this is sort of to get to your point. So when we got our first agent, and then HBO hired us to write this thing, and then Ron Howard hired us to write this thing. And I remember sitting with Ron Howard and his daughter, is it Dallas? Is that her name?
Yeah. Bryce, Bryce
Bryce.
Dallas Howard.
Yeah. Like she's a little girl, and he was making that Mel Gibson movie at the time in New York, and we're sitting in his Connecticut farmhouse. And at that moment, I was like, "Oh, I made it!" Like, little did I know that I had not made it yet, but I thought, "Oh, from where I came from, that was really like amazing."
Sitting with Ron Howard would make most young kids think I'm on the right track at least.
For sure. So we did that for 2-3 years, and then and look, it's so funny because I ran into him last weekend for the first time in years at this wedding. We went our separate ways, like a lot of creative things that just didn't work at the end of the day. He really wanted to be more of an actor, and I wanted to keep on this road. So all of a sudden, I find myself at like 27, 28. I'm finally making money at this. I'm finally being successful. I'm renting a house in the hills. It's like Entourage. I bring all my friends with me, and I'm finally just I buy a car, and I'm living life, and then like this thing falls apart, and I literally am going to myself, like, what am I going to do now? Because I don't want this to all go away, but I don't know, like, because when you're in a team, no one knows who is who. Like, is one guy more talented? That, and like, and we had gotten signed by.
You started questioning yourself.
Questioning, I think. How do I not myself, but how do I move forward and convince everybody that I can do this on my own without a partner? And William Morris had dropped us. Like, we really, like, he sort of imploded, and I sort of got some of the shrapnel for that, which, I forgive him for now. We were kids. It was a long time ago, all that stuff. But it was really fascinating. I had 2 producers who we had worked with previously who called me within a week they had heard that we had broken up and dropped, and they said one had a rewrite at Gramercy, and he said, call Paul Hall, and he called me. He said, I want you to come do this rewrite for me. I'll pay you, as I get that you and your partner broke up, but I believe in you. And then another producer named Preston Holmes also sort of gave me the same call and said, I have a project. And those 2 guys saved my life. Like, if I didn't have those calls, and I didn't get on that, and then I was able to get an agent on my own, and I was able to sort of rebuild. It took me years to get back to where I was in the beginning through that thing. So it's a long way to say, like, it's such a journey, right? Like the Grateful Dead say, what a long, strange trip it's been. Like, and I'm sure you feel the same way. Like, you could have your North Star and know where you're going, but how you get there, man, like, that's the journey of life, right? You're just
many turns.
Yeah. So, so for me, I got back on that thing, and then, and then all these different things start happening in your life, which motivate you differently. So I was mostly a feature guy, and all of a sudden I got married. I met a woman that I fell in love with, who we're about to celebrate 22 years together.
That's amazing. Congrats.
And I had a baby right away. And I was like, I need a real job, a steady check. We're writing features, like, you're living in the ether, and like you make your own schedule, which sounds great, but like, I just needed a weekly paycheck. It gets hard to get paid in film. It takes forever. I remember selling something. It took me like 6 months to get my first check. Like, it's hard to live that way, and it's stressful, especially when you have a family. Like, when it was me by myself, I didn't care. So I started to get into TV because, and this is actually a really cool story, which I've told before, but I'll tell again. So when I first got to LA the second time with my writing partner, I knew nobody here. And he had gone to Howard University. So he had a lot of friends that he had gone to Howard with, his clique, his group of cats that he knew. So we went out the first night in LA together, all of us, all these guys, these young, we're all pounding our chest, alpha, guys. And we go to this club, and I just met all his friends. So everyone gets in the club except me and a friend of his, whose name at the time was Cassius. So me and Cassius are like literally sitting there looking at each other going, well, what do we do? And how much money do you have on you? I'm like, I think I have $7. He's like, I have $10. So we buy some 40 ounces of beer. I think I had half a joint on me. And we went and sat in the parking lot and just sort of drank and smoked and talked about our dreams and our life and our aspirations. And he was working at Ticketmaster, and he said to me that he wanted to be an actor. And I said, no kidding, man. I'm like, have you acted in anything? He's like, yeah, not really. He's like, but I'll do a monologue for you. So he gets up. And like with the moon behind him and everything like that. I think
I know who you're going to say. I didn't know the story, but I know that you're friends with somebody.
Yes. So this is the story. So he does The Great White Hope for me, which, and I'm watching this guy and I'm going, am I high or is this guy as good as I think he is? Like, you know, like, because he's blowing me away. This guy's amazing. And so, you know, listen, I told him, I was like, dude, I believe in you. Like, oh my God, you're going to be a star, like, and everything. He's like, I appreciate that. You know, and we just always were friends and always had our back. And that guy was Anthony Anderson, you know, who's the star of Black. So again, like in life, who you meet.
Which I love.
Yeah, it's a great show. He's a great guy.
It's a great show from top to bottom. Everything, the cast, writing, love it. Love it.
Shoots on the Disney lot, by the way. So every time I go to the Disney
lot. Oh, it does?
Yeah.
Love that. That is a great story. I knew you were friends with him early. I didn't realize that's how you met him.
Yeah, I met him, and then we just always helped each other out. We were always looking out for each other. I think I introduced him to his first managers, and then, you know, he would always bring me on to things. And then, you know, when I started to get into TV, I went to him. I was like, we should create a TV show. And at that point, he wasn't who he is now, but he was enough of a personality. And we sold the show, and we created it, and it was on the WB. It was called All About the Andersons with Anthony and John Amos, and it was awesome. And why am I forgetting the mom? Mom was a Broadway star. Oh my God, it's so terrible. You'd know her if I said her name. Well, the reason I say is because we go to New York.
She was in All About the Andersons?
Yes. And it's terrible. She'd kill me if I didn't remember her name.
It's a long time ago.
Yes. I know. I'm trying to remember.
Roz Ryan, is that?
Yes. Do you know Roz? If you look up
but I'm looking
Chicago. She's all that. But all I remember with Roz, which you'll appreciate, is we go to the upfronts and then we proceed to get drunk. And next thing I know, I'm with her as she's singing torch songs at 3 a.m. at Don't Tell Mamas. And we literally closed that place down that night. It was a great time. But so we got that show on the air, and that was my first TV experience, was creating a show. And again, like if there's a theme and everything, that show got canceled after a year, and then I had to start all over again. You know, again, start at the bottom and work my way back up, because, you know, for a TV.
And was that just you and Anthony creating that together?
Yeah. And then we had a partner, Marco Panette, who had come aboard and had helped us. He was a seasoned showrunner. He had created a little show called Caroline in the City.
Yeah, loved it.
We used to walk by, and every time at CBS, we'd go into a meeting, Caroline in the City, they had a little star there, and he would get down on the ground and then he'd literally rub it and go, "My little money maker."
What's the biggest lesson you think you learned from, since it was one season, that you learned from that show that you've taken everywhere else?
It's an interesting question, Alan. I think it's, you know, look, there's sometimes the lesson is just, it's tough business, right? You know, and there's no rhyme or reason. There's nothing, you know. We were on 9:30s on a Friday night, a Black sitcom family show, like, which is usually Friday night at 9:30 is not the audience. And we were getting great numbers, which today, I mean, they were bad numbers for them, but today would be a big hit. You know what I'm saying? So, and then I think maturity, for sure, on mine and Anthony's level. I think we both, you know, we had some things that we could have probably dealt with politically better, that we just didn't, you know, we just had no training. It was, we were thrown into the deep end and sort of trying to navigate and figure out all the relationships and what does that mean and all those things. But, you know, and it's funny because I did that show and then I was sort of in the wilderness for a while and I had to sort of work my way back up. And then, you know, again, look, in life, and I always say this to my kids, you know, my daughter is, I think you may know or may not know, she's at Berklee School of Music, you know, and as they say down south, she can sing, right? She got a scholarship and she's got an unbelievable voice. And I said, you have all the talent in the world, you just now need a little luck, right? You know, it's, life is a mixture of both. I mean, be ready when that luck comes to you, but you better turn around, have it. So if I look at my life, there were, you know, Laurent saying that to me at the party after reading the script and introducing me to the people who become my first producer and first, you know, agent, you know, Preston Holmes and Paul Hall, like, you know, after my partner and I break up, coming to me and saying, "Hey, we got something for you." And then I'd say the next step was, I mean, again, because this is a career, right? It's like this, right? You're up, down, you're up, you're sideways. So at that point, I'm changing. I'm maturing. I'm a dad of 2 kids now, and I don't want to write jokes anymore, right? I'm starting to get sick of the humor part of it because I'm maybe going to a deeper place in my life, and I want to write about something that's a little more substance to me. And as much as I love comedy, I'm sort of growing, but no one will accept me at that. They've sort of pigeonholed me as this comedy guy. And so I'm going out and I'm hustling and working and trying to sort of, you know, prove to people. And I come upon this young woman who is in similar situation as me, that she's in a small, at the time, CBS. She's in the cable side, which was not CBS's main business. So like alone in a little dark office. And I remember when I first told my agent I was meeting with her, he's like, why? Like, you know, that's nothing's going to come of that, you know? And we went out and we became friends. We started selling, like we started believed in each other. We started selling some pitches. You know, we went and sold a pitch, a 1-hour drama pitch. And then about a year later, she called me and said, I have a show and I'm going to get you on it and get you on a drama and get you into the drama world. And her name's Bella Bajar. She just took over Netflix. She's the president of Netflix. And she absolutely, you know, but I owe her a lot.
She just replaced somebody there, right? I saw the story on her. Yeah.
And so again, I found someone who believed in me, right? You know, which you need, you know, I always say you need your rabbis, your godfathers.
And what show was that was that Supernatural?
No, it was The Cleaner. So The Cleaner, which was only ran for 2 seasons, but it got me into a drama room. And
who was the star of The Cleaner?
Benjamin Bratt.
Oh, yeah.
Great
he was in a movie when I was at Disney. I worked with him on were you there? It was a Hollywood picture, Blood. Oh, damn! I got to think of what it is. I'll think.
I want to catch back up to you, but you know, it's so funny. You just brought up. I wasn't there for that. And Ben and his family are beautiful people, and I really like them a lot. But you said something, and I want to go back to one thing, and then we'll come back to the career. I'll never forget this because it lived with me forever, and it goes back to our time at Disney. We were doing a Muppet movie. And we're doing one of the Muppet movies. I can't remember which it was.
Me neither.
And we did, and it was the first time I had, and I don't know why, but because you'd never taken me before, you invited me to go to the satellite thing where they would do the interviews.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
For those?
Yeah.
And so all the
a satellite media tour.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went with you. And we're there and we're watching and it's amazing. There's Kermit, but you're seeing like behind the scenes, you're seeing them do it. And, you know, Miss Piggy and, you know, we're growing up, the Muppet Show is probably the biggest show in the world as kids.
Totally.
So, I always say we're a little bit of, you know, Jim Henson's kids, you know, more than anything. Which also, by the way, he passed away around the same time as all this. But I turned around and then everybody got done and everybody was sort of talking in another room. And you asked me to go get something. You're like, Adam, can you go get something? Which I always laugh about because I remember you were always like, I was not the intern that did those things usually. Like you were always like, no, you could staple some stuff. And I was like, yeah, sure, okay. Right. But you had asked me and I went to go get it. I know it was terrible. I apologize in advance. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm a grown up. Like, someone else will do that. You asked me to get something and I walked in this room and there was Miss Piggy just laying there with nobody animating her. And I remember literally like frozen, just staring at Miss Piggy. And I like walked over and touched her. You know, and I literally was like, and by the way, nowadays there was no cell phones back then. I would have been like, you know, taking all these
totally
Piggy and all that stuff.
You would have had it on your arm.
It totally stayed with me till this day. Like every time I see her, I remember just lifeless Miss Piggy laying there and me being like, oh, you know, just like, I can't believe that I'm seeing Miss Piggy not animated and not Miss Piggy-esh, you know?
Yeah.
But back to the career, I did The Cleaner. And then again, like man, you just can't pick these things. The Writers Guild strike had happened. And so I'm finally getting my career up going. And now all of a sudden the strike happens. I'm like, oh, so I'm not working. And I mean, you know, I'm about to lose my house. Like, I mean, it's like, I'm really at zero. And I had 2, you know, blessings happen. I had a good friend of mine, Matt Bierman, who worked for direct-to-DVDs at Warner Brothers. And he called me up and he said, you know, you can still do a strike, but direct-to-DVD animation isn't covered by the Writers Guild. You can do it. Like, you're allowed to do it. The Guild has no issue with it. I called the Guild. They're like, yeah, if you get one of those gigs, go do it. And I'll never forget, I went to meet Matt and I said, thank you, man. Why are you doing this though? Like, you know, like you're saving, literally helping me and my family out. And he said, cause he used to be a big wig sort of studio guy. He goes, when I got fired, you were one of the few people who would still have lunch with me. And I never forgot that. And it was like, so again, and by the way, I never thought of it other than Matt's a good guy. I like Matt. Why wouldn't I have lunch with him? I don't care if he's the president of something, Phoenix Pictures or not. Like he's good people.
I think that's
friends to this day.
I think that's, sort of growing up on the East Coast.
I agree.
You and I definitely feel that's just something, because I feel like there's a lot of help we do here on the, helping other people out to get jobs, connecting them, those types of.
Yeah. No, 100%. And then I went to this meeting that I thought was pro guild at this big, I'm not going to say showrunner's house. And I ended up getting in this huge fight with like all these showrunners. And I mean, like, and because what had happened was I sort of had realized like they wanted the strike to end and they were like coming up with this plan to sort of like attack the guild. And I'm sort of a New York blue collar union guy. I grew up, my family's local 3IBW, electrical union. Like, I'm like, what? No. Blah, blah, blah. And I remember also thinking when it was over, like, oh, now we all go shake hands. Like that's in the moment of sort of the heated debate, we could say, and I went to shake this guy's hand and I remember him looking at me and going, I won't shake your hand. What's your name again? Like, I mean, like, I'm like, oh, I just got blackballed. I just ruined my career before it could even start, right? And I remember walking out of this meeting and I started to walk down the hill of this long driveway and there was two guys standing at the end of the driveway. One was a giant. When I say giant, like 6'7", 6'8". And he came down and he's like, what's your name? Right. And I was like, Adam Glass. He's like, that was amazing. He goes, screw those guys. You're 100% right. He's like, we're from Ohio. We're union guys. And da-da-da-da. And he's like, I'm Elwood Reed and this is Greg Plagueman. And they were at the time the showrunners with Jen Johnson on a show called Cold Case. And they're like, what are you doing? And I was like, and so the minute the strike ended, they hired me on Cold Case. Uh-huh. And I remember walking out of that meeting thinking my career was over. And then I found the two guys that like heard what I was saying and appreciated that I stood up to these guys. So I did that. And then that was an unbelievable gig. I learned so much. You produced every episode. I still have lifetime friends from that show. Danny Pino, one of the stars of the show, is still a great friend of mine, one of the greatest human beings besides actors that I know. Catherine was great on that show. Everybody, Jeremy, there was just so many good people that came off that show. Tracy, who had starred in, she'd come off Broadway on, why am I forgetting? Like the greatest show of its generation, that everybody, I'm terrible with the Broadway things, which my daughter would kill me for right now. She, show about New York and AIDS and Rent.
Yes.
Rent. Tracy and so many great people on that show. And it was a family and it was like, we had a softball team and it was like, we barbecued on the weekend. And it was like, yeah, this is the way to do it, right? Like, this is amazing. I'd come off other shows that had so much politics. So finally see a smooth running show, and Meredith Steen, who had created the show, was great. And everybody, but it only lasted a year and a half. And then all of a sudden I was sort of out in the market again. And the hottest job that everybody wanted to get on, or at least said they wanted to get on, was Supernatural. And I went into the
watched it.
I loved it.
Okay.
I'd watched the first 2 seasons, so I had not watched the 3 seasons because this was season 5. So meanwhile, I'm getting all these, like, I was actually, it was that point in my career, I was like, oh, I'm going to make a living at this, because I had other offers. It was the first time I had multiple offers. And the other offers were more procedurals, like NCIS and, all these shows. And I just was, again, I reached a point where it was like, I always say this, people knock procedurals. I love procedural writers, because if you come from that background, you learn so much about writing and how to write a board and act breaks. And it's great training. So I had gone off 2 back-to-back shows. So I had 4 years of this like procedural background. But at the time I wanted something different. And as I loved comic books and I loved genre, and I really wanted to get into something different. And so I went hard for the job. I went in, I always say I'm not the smartest, I'm not the prettiest, but I'll out hustle anybody, right? Like, I'm just going to go in and, do my thing. And I did, I remember being in the meeting and I was pitching Eric Kripke, who now is doing The Boys, who, is just, the guy's a genius. He's just amazing. And in the meeting, he was like, we're going to do that one. We're going to do that idea. He's like, you got more ideas? And I just kept pitching ideas, blah, 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 blah. And apparently he never did that in a room. He never would say that. So I got on Supernatural, and then that really changes my life. I mean, that is the game changer.
You spent 5 years there?
5 years, 16 or 17 scripts, created myth arc, created new characters, unbelievable family, just everybody from top to bottom. Jensen Jarrett are just two amazing guys, like really, really good dudes. Everybody.
Was that your first EP role?
I moved up to EP because I started there as a supervising producer and then worked my way up. I think by my third season, I was an EP. But great job. My son, it was the perfect age. He became a fan of the show, so we'd watch.
God, I can imagine. That's a young boy's dream. I mean,
I would take him up to Vancouver with me to see the boys and see, do episodes. And they were great with him, by the way. He never forgot. I'm going to see really quickly if I can find something. And he never forgot that. In fact, I just talked to Jensen yesterday, and the first question out of his mouth is, "How's Aiden?" It was like, and he was one of the stars of the shows, and it was like, so it was just great. I always joke that my house is the house that Supernatural built.
Very good. And Jensen started in soaps.
Yes, he did.
Days of Our Lives.
Yes, he did. An unbelievably, massively talented guy. I can't find it right now. So yeah, that's like, so Supernatural is like a big game changer. It's 5 years of my life. I joke all the time, unless I do something bigger, it'll be on my tombstone and my obituary.
And who was on the helicopter with me on my honeymoon was another producer.
Robbie was a writer and producer. He came in a year after me, and we became fast friends. He just
say his full name again. Robbie
Thompson.
That story. We were on a helicopter in Kauai, and they were behind us. It was just the four of us.
Yeah.
His wife and me and my husband.
It's amazing.
Such a small story.
So Robbie and I, and then Andrew Dabb, and then Jenny Klein, and then Eric and Nicole, and so many of us came out of there, and we all, like, again, you talk about a group that went on to do great things. Like it's a really powerful group of writers. But that was so we did that for 5 years, and then it was time to leave. After 5 years and writing so many episodes. And I didn't know what I was going to do. And I remember one thing I was going to say when I picked Supernatural, because it was on the CW. I remember my agent at the time going, "Wait a minute, you're going to turn down a CBS and an NBC show for a CW show?" And I just thought it was the better written show. And I was like, "Yeah, I will." And I made the right call, because even though it was a little less money, it was a better credit to have. And also, again, taught me something else, gave me a new thing to learn that I hadn't known yet, which was how to
it also sounds like something you loved, a genre you loved too.
By the way, it helped me. Again, you talk about like strange things in life. So two things come out of that. One, during the strike, by the way, again, strike was great for me because I was able to have access to showrunners that I couldn't have access to. So I'm walking the lines every day during the strike. I would say, like, I would have done great during war. It was like I would have figured out a way to sell fridges or get you something like that. Like, I'm sure there was like war profiteers in my family, because it was like I somehow, like, when shit goes to haywire, I sort of always am prosperous. So I turned around and I was able to meet people. And one of the people I met, and then you're having lunch with these people, and everybody's getting to know you as a human being. So it opened a lot of opportunities for me during the strike. But a guy I had met during the strike was a comic book writer named Mike Benson. And he was from New York and Yonkers. And we just started shooting the shit and talking about story and structure. And he said, "Oh, I'm writing this thing." And he was just saying, like, "I'm trying to figure some stuff out." And then we would just start on the line, start talking about it so much that he eventually was like, "Do you want to write a comic book with me?" And I was like, "Oh my God, that would be a dream come true." So we wrote a thing called Deadpool Suicide Kings, and it became like a New York Times bestseller. And it was like this whole thing. So like my first book was like gangbusters out of things. So I owe Mike for getting me into comic books. Then when I get into Supernatural, I'm at a Comic-Con, and I go by the DC booth just to say hi to a friend of mine. And one of the guys there were like, "Oh, you're Adam Glass. You write on Supernatural." And I go, "Yeah." And he's like, "And you wrote some stuff with Mike Benson?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm writing on my own now." And he's like, "Why aren't you writing for us?" And I'm like, "Because I don't know anybody." And he goes, "Give me a second." And he goes, I have somebody who is a giant Supernatural fan." Well, the giant Supernatural fan turned out to be Dan Didio, who was the editor-in-chief of DC Comics. He came over. We talked for like 20, 30 minutes. Me, him, and Leia, his fiance at the time, who's now his wife, and they were big fans of the show. And then that's how got me into DC. And then through that was able to, so I it's so funny. Most people go through comics and then get to
where you are now, where you.
And then I went to TV and started doing comics because I just loved them. Right. So, you know, it was sort of like, it wasn't going to help my career necessarily, but it was like, it's a good brand and I liked doing it. So
what was it like to see your name on a comic book for the first time?
Yeah, it's super exciting, right? Like, you know, like funny that my name's on TV shows, and my wife would even say, like, you seem more excited about the comic book, you know. It was like, because it's a childhood dream, right? You know,
yeah.
Mom's first book. I was like, see, you know, it's like I sent it to her, like, my name's on this.
It was worth all those quarters that I spent on those comics.
Exactly, it all paid off. So yeah, so it was like, you know, again, like this crazy sort of journey of sort of getting there. And then, you know, and I'll jump back to the TV in a minute, but I think the thing in comic books that was the big game changer for me was, you know, I remember having done some small things for them here and there. And, you know, DC's a lot more vocal to fans than Marvel. So I was sort of, in Marvel, I was like, oh, I'm a genius. Like, no, like every review was good and the fans seemed to like everything I was doing, but I was doing like Elseworld stuff. So I was never like sort of in the continuity of the Marvel universe. So then I go to DC and
because if you're in the content, for people who may not know, I would assume being in the continuity, you could get into, you know, people could, you know, they're very vocal if you don't follow that continuity,
or they feel like you've done something to a character or something like that. Right. So
it's kind of like soap operas too, or you know, not even, you know, whatever continual drama you're watching, even Supernatural. Yes. If you chose to do something to one of their favorite characters, right?
Yeah,
you'd hear about it.
100%. So I turn around and I do this, and I start to do stuff for DC, and oh my God, the fans are massively vocal, right? And I'm like, oh my God, like I'm never gonna work again. Like these guys know what I'm doing, right? And then I get called to do this thing called the New 52, which at the time they didn't tell us New 52, but they had given me a list of books. I didn't like any of them. And they said, is there any books you like? I said, you know, I was growing up, I read John Ostrander's Suicide Squad. Are you guys thinking of doing something? They're like, yeah, but how do you modernize that? And I was like, well, first of all, you put Harley Quinn in it. And they were like, why Harley Quinn? And I sort of gave all my reasons why Harley Quinn. And they said, no. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to do it then. And then there was two guys, Pat McCallum and Mike Martz. Mike Martz was in charge of the Batman family, and Pat McCallum was an editor there. And they just kept fighting. They saw the vision that I had for the book, and we got them to say, eventually, the people at DC Brass to say yes. And then I read the book, and it was just gangbusters. And I say this with, again, you know, it was her, right? You know, like she was just such a giant character that I think anyone could have came in if they had the idea and put her in that book, and it would have just been exploded. So, you know,
you stuck with the idea.
Yeah, I stuck with the idea. Again, the marketing, right? I had the idea. It's like
you knew that character,
she was due, you know, and also she was due to have her own story and get away from the Joker, which was my big issue. But listen, even on that, I mean, honestly, I got death threats. I had people send me, you know, on my Facebook, and like, because we took her out of the Harlequin costume and we put her into this new costume, which was more from Arkham Asylum, which wasn't my choice. It was like, these are all decisions being made over my head. And yet, you know, I was getting all the scrap metal. And then I had her have an affair with somebody other than the Joker, and they got mad at me about that. But, you know, listen, it all led to the movies and, you know, all that stuff. And, you know, it was good. And it was, again, lessons learned, you know. It's funny because people always give me credit for putting her in there and then leading to the movies. I will be honest with you and the audience, it's done very little to help my career in any way, shape, or form. Like literally, it's like just like one of those like cool things to say, but it doesn't mean anything monetarily. It doesn't mean anything, you know, like people don't be like, hey, get me the guy who put Harley Quinn into the Suicide. You know, it's like, but I'm proud of it. I'm proud that,
and that's what matters.
Yeah, I'm proud.
I mean, what's it like having your kid, Aiden? You worked with him on one too, right?
So Aiden,
is he a comic book person as well? Did he?
Funny because kids nowadays they get their comic book sort of stuff out of video games and movies and TV shows, right? They don't necessarily read the books anymore, but it doesn't mean they're not as big of fans of it, right? They don't have a great appreciation of it. So he very much loves all that stuff, though. You know, he's almost 17, so he's now getting probably too cool for that. But you know, yeah, he's very much so. And we always had this beautiful tradition again of storytelling. and he was dyslexic really badly, and he needed like other ways than reading stories. So to sort of from a creative point of view, we just started making up our own stories and sort of created this thing called the Lollipop Kids, which then we did for Aftershock Comics to my Aftershock family, which is great, one of the biggest independent comic book companies out there. And we did that together, and that was awesome, amazing to do that with him.
I mean, that's got to be a great experience.
Yeah, having him by the side of me. He has the gift of storytelling for sure. He has many gifts. The question is, which one does he choose? I told him you should go try them all. You're young, have a good time. He's actually going to Ireland for a gap year next year, so
awesome.
Go study in Ireland and all that stuff. So I'm excited for him.
Study abroad?
I do this gap year, this gap program, this arts program. It's like 3 months in Ireland. So yeah,
amazing.
Different. I always joke, my kids are having I want to come back as my children in my next life.
Yeah, well, that's what you've worked hard for.
Very much so. Yeah, my wife and I always were like, we're the bridge. It's like, and my daughter's going to college, and my son will go to college, so it'll be,
Do you think he'll follow in your footsteps in some way or another?
I think both my kids are artists, and the question is what they'll do with it. My daughter writes music, she sings, she dances. Her dream was Broadway musicals. I think she still wants to do Broadway musicals, but I think she also wants to be a rock star. And then my son, he looks like a supermodel. He's such a good looking kid. He's like, and he acts and he makes music. But yes, if you were to ask him today, he would say, and he's told me this before, I want to be in the room with you, Dad, the writer's room, but I also want him to go out and see things and then come back and make that decision. So I want him to have experiences in the world.
What is an Adam Glass writer's room like?
I always say this to people. I already have me in the room. I don't need me. I want different voices. I want different experiences. I want people who, are bringing a different story that I can't tell, or that I don't maybe have the inside track to, I just did a show for Netflix that I created called In From the Cold. We were shooting in Spain before we got pulled back. I'm knock on wood. I'm hopefully going back there top of the year to shoot again.
So tell us about it, because it's your idea. You created it.
Yep. So, a lot of times I think even if it's not, I always say this with writers, you're channeling some part of your life, right? So, my wife is very young. When I say very young, I'm 52, she's 43. And she is, both smart and beautiful and all these things. But, she's finding herself now with a daughter already gone, and a son about to leave the house. What's next for her? So at the foundation, it's a woman who is in her early 40s, whose only child is about to leave the house. And they sort of have this last trip together to Spain for a tournament that she's doing, and this dream that they've had since she's a little girl of ice skating, and sort of bond them together. But it's that moment where it's like, we have to grow up, and it's like, probably not going to be an Olympic ice skater. This is probably the last competition, right? It's like, I'm good. I'm not great. I'm never going to get to the next level. But we have this trip together, and Mom's divorced, and and everything's not, maybe like, she looks in the mirror and everything's not what it used to be, right? Like, she's like, it's like she's not 20 anymore, right? By the way, I joke because it's Margarita Rivera, who I don't know if you know, but
I do. I'm very excited. Watched her on Revenge. Watched her on The Deuce. Great actress.
Great actress. Great.
How do you pronounce her last name? Because I'm glad you did it. Because I couldn't.
Don't make me do it again. Kill me if she sees this. She's correcting me. But my joke is like, she's a Hollywood 40. It's like, Margarita, you look good in a potato bag. It's like, so. But the idea is, she gets there, and her and her daughter clamming heads as relationships happen, and she's trying to just have this trip, and she basically runs out to get some tampons for her daughter. And when she does, she's about to she gets into this elevator, and as the elevator door is about to close, she just sees this guy standing out there, and she's like, that's weird. And right before the doors close, he throws something in, and it's this gas thing that sort of takes her out. And she wakes up in this warehouse, and she's like freaked out, like, what is going on here? And oh my God. And she starts to cry. She's scared. And I call it the Men in Black, the guy walks in with the black suit, the earpiece thing, and he sits down, and he has a computer, and he's like, let me tell you a story. And he basically spins this tale of this legendary Russian spy called the Whisper, who was in New York City in the 90s and has all these confirmed kills, and why she was so amazing and all this stuff. And then, like magic, she just disappeared one day, and it's been off the res for 20 years and no one's seen her. And he's like, and basically he gives his theory of what happened to her. And, you know, his theory is that she met someone, she fell in love, you know, the wall fell, you know, all of a sudden the KGB fell apart. She saw a way to get out. She did, and thought she would never be found again. Isn't that right? You know, Natasha, da 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 da. And she's like, she just laughs in his face. She's like, you're out of your mind. She's like, I'm a PTA mom. She's like, I can't even do, you know, I can't get through a yoga class. She's like, you've got the wrong person, da da. And he's like, fine, let's just do it your way. And he basically turns around as he's walking out. He turns to one of the guys. He goes, kill her. She's like, kill me. And she's literally like, oh my God, this is crazy. Please, somebody call the American embassy, all this stuff. And the guy comes up, puts the gun in her head, and then she goes all Jason Bourne. And you realize he's 100% right. So it's like, what happens when you've been, you know, you've lived the part so long, you've become it, and you think it's all in your rearview mirror. And what happens, especially at this point in her life, where it all
crashing back.
She's all brought back. And can you do the same things you did at 20? Can she kill again? Can she seduce again? Can she's like, she makes a point at one point, you know, the guy says to her handler, you know, your expectations of men are lower than you think, because she's talking. And she's like, I'm not talking about men. I have a C scar. You know, I'm like, she's like, you know, my nipples are cracked from breastfeeding. She's like, I'm not, 20 years old anymore. I can't, you know, like she's really, so I really wanted to ground it in something real, you know? And so this woman's trying to sort of find her way back and keep this from her daughter. And can she do this and get away from it and just get this over with? So it's called In From the Cold, and really, really great. But I hired all women for the writer's room because I'm not a woman. I was raised by women. I live with women, but I wanted a female perspective. So this gets back to your question about the writer's room. So my room I had this unbelievable group of women. One was a Russian woman that I actually, Anya Mesnik, who I found in New York City, who's a playwright. Gaia Viola, who is from Sicily, unbelievable young writer. And then Erica Anderson, who I actually knew from my cold case days, unbelievable writer from North Carolina. And then young lady Mel, who I met in Chicago while I was shooting The Shy. And so, yeah, it was predominantly a female room. And it was awesome. Amazing.
I'm still watching The Shy, thanks to you.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I got nothing but love for everybody from The Shy. I was only there for the first season, but, you know, I hope we need more shows like that on TV. So,
oh my God. Yeah, totally. It's so good. But I'm so excited for the show with Marguerite.
I go back and shoot it and get it done. And, you know, and then hopefully a lot of other, you know, things in the fire that hopefully will come to fruition.
And what is the Barkskins?
So Barkskins already actually came out. It's basically, you know, so my buddy Elwood Reed, the guy that I told you the story that I met in Cold Gaze, we've stayed friends 3 years and worked together a bunch of times. So, you know, what I did for a long time till just, you know, last couple of years was I was what you call number two. I would run writers' rooms, you know, sort of like, you know, vice president, you know, is like what I like to say. And it was my gig for a long time. And then, you know, you're just trying to work your way up and then eventually you become the president. So, Elwood had this show. And it was basically about, I kept saying it was Deadwood in Canada, you know, in New Quebec, you know, and basically it was all about sort of like the people who came there to settle and all the different factions fighting over what would become Quebec City. So you had the native people there who have a very different experience, by the way, than the American Indian, right? Much more powerful, much more organized, and much more, because the French were very different. And so versus what we did horribly to them, they were able to have more of a history and more of a participation in the culture. And then sort of the church obviously plays a big part in it. And then, you know, the French, so it's all these warring factions and they're all coming together to sort of settle this new land. And it really fascinating. I mean, it was truly learned a lot. Another really cool group of people in that writer's room. Great Native American writer named McGizzy. And I apologize, Migs. I can't remember. I do remember your last name, but if I try to pronounce it, you'll punch me in the face.
It won't be good.
What?
I said it won't be good if you try to pronounce it.
But, you know, great writer. You know, we had Kasenyo, a Russian writer who came in, Mesnik. I mean, there were just so many great people. I mean, that's the other great thing, right? You just meet people along the way, and then we all collect each other, and some people you really bond with, and you make these friendships, and then, you know, you just keep moving. I got to work with Walter Kern, who's a great novelist. You know, he wrote Up in the Air and Thumbsucker. Also writes for the New York Times. He was on that show. So yeah, it was a really, really good experience.
I mean, you've worked with so many people.
It's what happens, right? In a career, you wake up one day and you're like, oh yeah, we've worked with a lot of people.
Is there one thing you have yet to do that you've just, it's boiling in your head that you...
Yeah, it's funny you say that. I mean, yeah, it's like I just had this conversation with my daughter, actually. I think when people see me, they're like, you made it. And I don't feel like I made it. I feel like I've done really well. I have a career, but I still have aspirations that I'm trying to get to. There are people I really admire, Shonda Rhimes, I really admire Ryan Murphy. I really like those. I'd like to have that kind of career. I'd like to get to a place where I have multiple shows going. I have a movie that I've been wanting to write forever about Houdini, and I think I have a take on it that no one else has, that I, keep swearing that I'm going to write. Like if I literally, here, I'll do this. Like every book that I have here,
oh wow,
underneath this thing is a Houdini book. Like, so all I do is read Houdini books.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Constantly. Like this is literally like,
if you were casting him today, do you know who would play him?
It's really funny. I think that if I think Robert Downey Jr. would make a great Houdini. I think he's built like him. I think he looks like him. I think he's really great. But maybe it's time for a new generation, younger actors. I don't know, but there are so many people who there are a few people who can play him. But my first pick would be obviously Robert Downey Jr.
That's a great one, and you have to write it first.
Yes. Well, that's the thing now, right? Finding the time. I thought when I came back during COVID, I would have all this time, and then I turned out I got busy. So, which is horrible because like I talked to my sister and she was unemployed for a while and she's like, how you doing? And you don't want to be like, great. You're like, you're like, oh yeah, it's, so we're incredibly blessed in our business because if for writers, a lot of us kept working during it.
Yeah. It gives you an opportunity to write. Do you have a guilty television pleasure right now?
I love The Boys. I thought it's like,
I watched season 1. I need to get on to season 2.
Yeah, Garth Ennis, who I had the pleasure of meeting a few times. I think he's a great writer. And then Eric Kripke, my old boss, is writing the show, and really love it. But me and my daughter's thing is The Crown. Like we're
so good.
You see the new trailer?
No.
Oh, you got
it. It's coming in November, right? It's coming
next November. You got to watch the trailer.
Okay.
It just came out. They just dropped it on Monday. Like we were calling.
Oh, okay. Totally missed it.
You see it? Oh my god.
It's so well done. I'm so glad it's not ending when they said it was.
I know. Me too.
Yeah, so it's a great show. Yeah. Bravo to you your show's going to be on Netflix too. That's a good place to be.
They're a great company, great brand. I'm really, really excited to, deliver a show. And my hope is to do many shows for them.
That's awesome. Adam, this has been fantastic. I know people have been writing, saying they're loving it. Such great stories. I appreciate that.
I can't see any of them. You can see those? I am aware of those.
I can.
I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And listen, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Anyone who's listening to this, Alan has always been an unbelievably nice and compassionate young man, great guy. And
young man, I'm older than you.
Yeah, but I remember when you were young, the Jufro, and
yeah. And I had a lot of hair. I turned 54 on Sunday.
Look at you. You look amazing, my friend. And but you always had a great heart, and I always appreciate that. You're always so kind, and I just think it resonates in your life and the people you surround with you and your beautiful and wonderful husband. I couldn't be happier for you in the life that you have.
Thanks so much, Adam. I really appreciate it. Don't go anywhere. I'm going to just sign off. Everybody, thank you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Check out all of Adam's shows. I've got to check out Supernatural because I know I'd love it. I never did. And I'm a CW guy. Like I would. Totally would. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.